International superstar.
Mr. Carter, the head butler, sits there.
Not anymore, he doesn't. This is my place. What about Ostrich, a pelican, and the Inland Revenue got in common? They can all stick their bills up their arse.
Billy Connolly was a complete breakthrough because college comedians who were big stars at home in Scotland rarely made the journey south. Billy, who'd been with the Humble Bums, a band, and his introduction to songs got longer and longer, gradually became more of a comedian and began to become a big name in his own country.
Absorber of life and then a reteller of life. And the place, the source of all his power, if you like, was Glasgow.
I happen to think that Glasgow people swear better than anybody else in the world. It's like machine gun fire, you know.
I always think Billy Connolly is the bridge to alternative comedy.
I know it's a kind of disgusting subject. Diarrhea is no joke.
It was talk about things that people didn't talk about, jobbies, farts, all those things that were rude, but he talked about them like a kid does. And that was new and different, and people loved that.
Can you imagine, instead of going...
fart gags, it's willy gags. But what he's done is he's elevated schoolboy humour to the level of comedic art.
And he said, Jesus Christ, it's Billy Connolly. I said, yeah. He said, I thought I was picking up a big blonde.
Billy was the man. Connolly was #1, suddenly, in England.
I'm Her Majesty's Highland Servant! There's no stopping me now.
Billy's very different to a lot of the comedians who particularly came out of footlights. He ended up by accident. He was a welder, wasn't he, in the shipyards?
Yes, worked in the shipyards. And he said to me once that, looking back on his life, when they went to the pub, he would listen to the older men in the pub telling jokes and things that had happened to him in their life. And he said, I must have started to absorb it then.
Working-class environment. He was a welder in a shipyard. He was not intending to be a serious actor or a performer of any kind. He was, you know, the best he wanted was to be a musician. And so for a while he joined a folk group.
His stand-up evolved from chat between the songs. It was a sort of new route into comedy. It wasn't working men's clubs and bow ties. It was a different way of
New kind of person that was going to bridge all those kind of class divides. He was just going to smoothly go through it. You didn't have to come from that and stay there. You respected people for who they were, not what they had come from, and that was a very different voice that he brought to comedy.
Laugh because he's being clever with the rhyme. He's making you laugh by painting a picture of this beautifully insane situation. Comedy songs, if the chorus is funny, you repeat the chorus each time. It's no longer funny after the second time.
Well, when I was a boy, I worked in the shipyards. When I was 16, I'd just left school.
I was able to talk about, you know, life in the shipyard and Glasgow pubs and his whole sort of life before he became famous. It gives a connection and a reality to his stuff and an insight into a world which, you know, for most of the country, they don't know that much about.
If you're going to go to yoga, prepare yourself for this. Just open your legs. Now, I don't want you to force yourself. Open your... That's fine, just about there. And fall for... Now, don't push forward. Just... That's right, let the weight carry him.
He has an extraordinary power of observation, and he has an extraordinary sympathy for other people, especially those in, you know, who have a certain amount of deprivation, possibly because he comes from a fairly deprived background himself. And so I think that he can sort of, he understands that, and he can convey it to a general audience.
Now, what I found when I was there in the pub was that The rich and the successful and the Millionaires' Row kind of people mixed very easily with the council house people. You're all standing there laughing, had a lot in common, blah, blah, blah. And the V-neck pullover, Volvo mob. They were all saying, what are they talking to them for? They should be talking to us. We're nearly toffs. We're nearly toffs.
He started to make things true. He was doing observational comedy, but he also took old jokes and made them true, as though they had happened to him, as though he had actually met the person he was talking about.
A great and dear friend of mine, Davy Haggerty, was standing, and we're all, you know, the rich guys, you know, seriously millionaire guys and all. And this guy who lived in the council houses, Davy Haggerty, he's standing there. We're all drinking pints. And one of the V-neck pullover crowd fucking comes mincing over. He said, I reckon, in the 9 months I've lived here, my house must have gone up by, what, £12,000? And so he picks on Davy, who lives in the council house. He says, what do you reckon you would get if you sold your house? And Davy says, about 60 days. 2 guys on a golf course in Glasgow, playing golf. Now, one of them's...
There's one particular example of his stand-up, which is one of the first pieces I saw, where he's telling a very classic, straightforward joke. It's a joke that you've probably heard a version of, and you can probably, if you really thought about it, work out where the punchline's going. But because he tells it as being between these 2 Glaswegians who are going off to play golf, he's got their together, the gun, and he's got the noises and he's got the moves. He's not just doing it in a casual, rapid way. He does it very precisely. So you can almost see the gun being put to the wife in the bedroom with the next door neighbour. So he turns to his buddy, the hitman, also Billy Connolly, and says, how much you charge?
To work out what he's doing there. And I love those kind of laughs, those kind of hearing the audience's gears whirring kind of laughs.
You know what's going on, but he doesn't really say what's going on. But he just makes this movement, and then you realise, oh, right.
I must ask you about that suit. I mean, what's a working-class lad like you doing with a suit like that?
Like it? It's a sort of substitute for tattoos. I'm frightened to get a tattoo. Yeah.
And why do you think he worked so well on Parkinson when he came on there then and kept going on there?
Well, it was sheer outrage at the time, and Parky couldn't have enough of him. He did it 15 times, I think, the Parkinson show.
Yeah.
One night he was talking about something and he said, that was about as funny as a fart in a spacesuit. Now, it seems pretty innocuous now, that line, but at the time the audience collapsed and outrage of saying something like that. It's quaint looking back.
I think I think it was his first appearance on there. He did the joke about the woman who died and got buried, and that probably changed his career, that joke.
Oh, yes.
His manager had advised him not to do it.
That's right.
He went ahead and did it, and Parkinson laughed so much at it.
Yeah.
When you watch a host who's laughing hysterically at somebody, that's telling the audience as well. I mean, it's funny anyway, but it's telling them, this man is really funny.
I hope I can get away with this. It's a beauty. He said, how's the wife? He said, oh, she's dead. I said, what? He says, dead. Do it again. Dead. I murdered her. Earth.
Now, this was a very, very dangerous joke to tell on national television, and it was a risk and it was a gamble. But Connolly's instinct was that people would go for it, and they did. Absolutely everyone loved it. It became a kind of cause célèbre. It broke down the barriers of what you could get away with on television in terms of humour, and it made him a kind of, for a minute, I mean, certainly, it made him a national treasure. Absolutely.
It's a great moment, really, in 70s TV, because it's a star being born on the nation's screens right there in front of you. Because literally the next day, the whole country knew who Billy Connolly was. And all of a sudden, he was, you know, he went from playing folk clubs in London to playing huge theatres.
Connolly's appearance actually is one of the first things that you notice before he even opens his mouth. He's like a sort of roadie for a heavy metal band than an actual comedian. So that already sort of gets your attention.
Very aware that when you're on stage, you need to stand out, you know, particularly in his early stuff. He doesn't come on in jeans and a T-shirt. He famously had a pair of boots made that were bananas. In his very early stuff, he's often wearing some quite shocking 70s gear. He's always quite shrewd, I think. Beneath his kind of man of the people persona, I think he knew exactly how a performer needs to be.
Although he's the big guy from Glasgow, there's also a lot of femininity in his act. Some people might say campness, but I think it's a femininity, maybe from growing up with all those aunties, maybe strong women around him. Suddenly be quite overblown about something being extraordinary and really using words and enjoying it in what is a very feminine or camp way, which I think really lifts a performance.
He'd obviously studied a lot of the characters in his native Glasgow, and I remember the routine where he does the 3 drunken walks.
3 different drunken walks. Now, somebody doing a drunken walk, yes, okay. I think people have probably done something like that before. But the way he would break it down and define it.
Yeah.
3 different drunken walks. That is brilliant.
Yeah. And I suppose everyone in the audience is going, yeah, I've seen one of them, but I've never seen it.
No, it's when you chime in with something the audience can identify with.
Yeah. That is the secret to the great observational comedians. They're able to say, here's something you've all seen, but you've never seen it.
You know, the audience could shout anything at that point and he can't even respond, because he's yards from his microphone. But it's all sort of beautifully timed, so he's back to the microphone in time to set up the next bit.
I'd never seen anyone do that. So it's like, again, he's built on something that was there, and he's built and added his own thing, and he comes back to the mic to say what the guy might be thinking, what he's saying, when he's catching a cab. So he's built from a tiny observation this whole scene.
Indescribable piece of comedy. It's only Billy Connolly could pull that off because of his neat way of observing the frailties of drunk Scots people, largely, but he manages to make it into a global joke.
Don't you have a particular trick that you do? Is it at dinner parties you do it, or is it buffets?
Or what? Oh, yeah, the thing. It's not a buffet. It was a thing myself and some actor friends did at Edinburgh Festival many years ago. At Edinburgh Festival, you're often asked to these buffets with the Lord Mayor and people like that, and they give you the paper plate and those tomatoes and bits and stuff and a plastic fork and a drink, and so you can't do anything with either. There's no way to put the drink down and your tomatoes keep rolling around. It becomes like one of those little things you used to get to put ball bearings in Mickey Mouse's eyes.
It's interesting in that he got his big break being slightly outrageous, and then years later he goes on the Graham Norton show and does a routine which is also a little bit outrageous but brilliant, and you know, so he still knows that's the way to go.
He paints a picture very well when he tells a story, because his story on the Graham Norton, you're in a very genteel, polite setting, and you're sabotaging the whole thing. The whole atmosphere. That was what was brilliant. He sets the scene very well when he tells a story. He doesn't launch straight into it.
And there's a cheeky naughtiness.
Yes.
That, although it's rude, it's sort of got a naivety about it. And
it's a naughty boys syndrome.
So here's what you do if you're ever at one of those buffets. It's the best, the only thing you can do is you put your willy on the plate. And then you get some salad and you put it on the top. Don't put dressing on.
Graham Norton, you know, is a very different environment to the chat shows that Billy Connolly excelled on in the 70s and the 80s, and he's got, you know, he's surrounded by stars, but he's still telling his story in the true Billy Connolly style.
No, you mustn't make a big mountain of it. That's true. You just do enough so to look as something lurking in the long grass. and then you just walk along and mingle with people. Hello, how do you do? Sorry, show. That was excellent.
He just does this little routine about how he's having this conversation, carrying his salad, and then he says, but what you have to be very careful about, is those plastic forks are very, very sharp.
And then you dare each other to go and talk to the Lord Mayor's wife. Talk about salad. Oh, yes. You know, they do a lovely salad here, yes. And you can see the woman going, I didn't see the sausage rolls. But beware, because those white plastic forks are very sharp. You'll be pissing like a fountain for
I remember him talking about being Scottish and having white skin and just being completely unable to cope with sun and Ibiza and getting burned, and he turned it into a brilliant routine.
Yeah, the whole routine about pointing out the colour of his arm to the audience and everything, and wandering off into a whole discussion about his freckled shoulders with the burn. And
Billy Connolly was at his best when he was explaining the Scottish to everyone. There is an absolute pride in being Scottish, but at the same time he's aware of the ludicrous nature of what it is to be Scottish. And one of the things he keeps returning to is how the Scottish are in the sun.
It's the great privilege, of course, of comedians. They are allowed to mock themselves and, by implication, their own home place, which is very liberating, actually. You don't hear those sorts of jokes from anyone else, and audiences love them.
Burned my bloody shoulders. Fart machine, it's a sort of a glass with, it looks like putty in it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I got one of those.
And you shove your fingers in it. And it's fantastically funny.
Yeah.
And one of the actresses was complaining, because we were smoking cigars in our dressing room, you know, Oliver Platt and everybody, we're all blowing away there. And the smoke was going through the ventilator, and so this old actress was complaining. Until we went in with the farting machine, and Ollie stuck his bum in her door, did this, and she screamed with laughter, and thereafter we could smoke away.
Oh, you
we could do no wrong.
On the Tom Snyder show in America, they were doing his sort of fart gags, and saying that an actress had this sort of machine that could sort of create farts, which of course they had enormous fun with.
And normally the director would say, I forgot, right, okay, it was funny the first time, lads. Let's get back to it. Let's remember why we're here. Why we're paying you the big bucks. But no, Stanley Tucci's got a machine of his own.
Billy Connolly doesn't have to be telling sort of formalised jokes. You know, it's very interesting to see him sometimes in interviews where you can see that he's just a funny guy, and he loves anecdotes and just chatting.
I can't fart just at will. I would love to be able to do that. And I can't raise one eyebrow. It's two things I'd love to be able to do.
All the things we wish for.
Because just think how nice it would be to do both, you know, without flying into the air.
What's lovely about it is it's infectious. That kind of laughter is infectious, and you can hear the crew giggling in the background, and the whole discussion becomes like a bunch of kids who just can't stop laughing. And he's literally being reminded of stories as he goes through, culminating in him suddenly remembering what is quite a well-known story about the coronation.
The coronation? The Queen Mother was sitting beside the King of Tonga. Tonga?
Yeah.
That's right. And the horse farted. In one of those carriages. And the Queen Mother says to the King of Tonga, I'm sorry. And he said, oh, I thought it was the horse.
people very related to in America. I think it's because when he went there, it was like he was telling tales on us. So he would tell stories about what Britain was like. And also, of course, Americans loved it when he would tell a story where the Queen Mother does something as rude as fart, although she doesn't. It was just a great story. Also, I suppose to Americans it made it feel like that we all sort of knew the royal family. I mean, to them, what could be more sacrilegious than you're saying the Queen Mother farted? Even referred to a fart is hilarious and shocking. And I'm sure it was hard for him at first to find a way into the American audience, but he really, really did.
Oi! Lost your way to Sunday school, pal. This is McSquizzy's turf. Nobody messes with McSquizzy, because that's me.
What can happen in a comedian's career is that they work so hard at the beginning and they tread the boards and they do it, and then at the end they get this lovely invitation. Would you like to be the voice of something in a Hollywood animated thing? And he plays a squirrel in one, McSquizzy. He's got his distinctive Glaswegian voice, it's just the same as ever, but it fits so well with this sort of bolshy squirrel on a tree telling a bear you can't come here. So they fit his character beautifully.
Very disciplined performer, I think. Billy would do it just what they wanted.
What? Touch a needle in this tree and I'll give you such a do it. Yeah.
There's a bear who's travelling across country facing all these obstacles. He comes to a tree, he wants some honey, and he's about to climb when this little squirrel appears. It's Billy Connolly, and he says, "Hey, you!" in the true Glaswegian Connolly accent, and threatens him, "Don't you touch my tree." And the bear says, "Oh, yeah?"
You and what army?
Oi!
Oh, that army.
Mess not with the Furry Tail Clan, defenders of the good, crusaders of the righteous, guardians of the pine.
Keep your tree. I'll find another one.
Look! He's got a wee freakish twin growing out of his back.
This one'll work.
As soon as he reaches the next tree, there's McSquizzy again.
Hey!
Ouch!
That was a warning, all right?
Oi! I mean, beautifully, of course. It's impossible for McSquizzy to have got to that tree in the time that it takes the bear to go across it, but that's the comedy of it.
Try it again, I'll be kicking your furry brown bahookie.
What? Hey, this is a different tree.
They're all my trees. I suggest you turn round and head right back from whence you came.
That's what I'm trying to do. So just point me the way to town, and I'll be out of here.
He's got that sort of character in his voice that just brings alive an animated subject, whether it's a squirrel or whatever it happens to be. He's got that sort of sense of humour and power that will really, really bring alive a cartoon character. Very funny.
The way that Connolly plays it, the way Connolly's voice is it's the man who did all those stand-up shows about Glaswegian. It's the man who understands the hard nut nature of a Glaswegian, putting it all into a squirrel.
That's it! You're asking for a whooping.
Ready! Fire!
I think he could come on screen and then be doing something, and a big cross-section of the public would just warm to him.
Yes.
How will I know what the Queen requires?
You'll be sent a message.
And who'll bring it to me?
Her Highness Aquarium.
I'll need a man who knows where I am.
Oh, I don't think it'd be difficult to find you.
That's not good enough.
Then we'll have to see what can be arranged.
Aye. Do.
Finding real life funny.
Yeah.
As away from the jokes and everything, but stumbling upon something like in his travel things that suddenly he'll point out how amusing this particular little detail is that you wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
But when you get your nipples pierced, if you're one of the boys, if you're a real nipple piercing guy, not one of them silly one-ring people, you get a thicker one every year and through the hole. Ah, shut up. Is that the attitude that made this country great?
What's fascinating about Connolly is that because he has a sort of rebel status, actually, but he's endearing. There's on one hand that he's quite powerful, he's quite abrasive.
The 60s was such a breakthrough. It was the biggest breakthrough since the Teddy Boy. You looked different from the soles of your feet to the top of your head and scared the shit out of everybody. And parents got frightened. And I know what they were frightened of, because now I've got daughters. And they play my records. And I can hear them in the room listening to Dylan going, "Everybody must get stoned." Oh, for fuck's sake.
He gets knighted for his services to comedy. He does wonderful films. Mrs. Brown, of course, is one of the classics.
All I did was tell the woman how I feel, for God's sake.
You don't tell Her Majesty how you feel.
I speak as I find, Archie.
The fact that he can not only act, but he can act with real trained actors and not only hold his own, but be really good in it, shows you how much truth there is in his comedy. You know, his material's always been really interesting because it isn't just jokes. It never really was.
So which one of us was she flirting with?
Good-looking one.
I'm no wee spat, Archie.
Now he has become, since then, very much a kind of national treasure. He's sort of grown and evolved from his origins as a sort of really quite abrasive, quite vulgar, always funny comedian into something rather larger than life.
The biggest terror I have of growing old is smelling of pee.
Are you on the stage yet?
I don't smell of pee, but I live in terror of smelling of pee.
Everywhere he goes, he does make it personal, and that's a really great gift for a performer on stage. And I think his whole life he's done that, and also his continued interest in life. And that's fantastic, and I think we've all sort of grown up with him and then followed his life as it's gone along, and he's let us be part of it.
Sex is an animal act. And the British just get it wrong all the time. Because you take the manners of the dining room into the bedroom. You can't do that, except for foreplay. It's good to remember to start at the outside and work it.
That's what he does, is he extracts this thing that is in his DNA, and he makes it hilarious, and he makes it relatable to people across the world. And that's what he'll be remembered for.
Are you deaf as well as stupid?